The joke landed lightly at first, almost lost in the hum of the massive Navy ship cutting through the open sea, but it would echo through every steel corridor by the end of the day. A tired single father stood near the rail, clutching his young son's hand, trying to look smaller than the vast grey world around him. He wore no uniform, no medals, no signs of importance. He had just worn shoes, a faded jacket, and the quiet posture of a man who had learned to survive without being seen. When the Navy SEAL lost his rank with a half-smile meant for amusement, no one expected the silence that followed, the kind of silence that feels heavy, sacred, and dangerous all at once. And no Onya, absolutely no Onya expected what happened next. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the hidden strength of ordinary people, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that you never truly know who you're standing beside. The man's name was Daniel Hayes, and life had stripped him down to essentials long before he ever set foot on a Navy ship. He had once lived a life defined by discipline and purpose, but that life belonged to another chapter, one sealed away by loss and responsibility. Now, he was defined by early mornings, cheap coffee, and the soft breathing of his 6-year-old son, Noah, asleep beside him each night. Daniel's days revolved around making sure Noah felt safe in a world that had already taken too much from them. His wife had passed away years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him with grief that never truly faded, and a child who needed him more than he needed himself. The invitation to board the Navy ship had come unexpectedly, through a charity program for families of fallen and former service members. Daniel almost declined. Crowds made him uncomfortable, and anything connected to his past stirred emotions he preferred to keep buried. But Noah's eyes lit up at the idea of seeing a real Navy ship, of standing on a deck that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. For his son, Daniel said yes. From the moment they stepped aboard, Daniel felt the weight of memories pressing against his chest. The smell of metal and salt air, the precise movements of sailors, the constant rhythm of orders carried on the wind. It all felt familiar in a way that hurt. He kept his head down, guiding Noah carefully through the maze of passageways, answering his excited questions with soft smiles. To everyone else, Daniel was just another civilian guest, another grateful visitor. No one noticed how his eyes instinctively scanned corners, how his posture straightened unconsciously when alarms echoed faintly in the distance. The SEAL who made the joke noticed him only because Daniel didn't act impressed. Surrounded by elite warriors and towering officers, most civilians reacted with awe. Daniel reacted with quiet respect, the kind that didn't seek attention. The SEAL, relaxed and confident, tossed out the question about rank, expecting embarrassment or laughter. Instead, Daniel paused, his grip tightening slightly around Noah's hand. He answered calmly, without pride or apology, as if stating an old fact that no longer defined him. What followed wasn't immediate applause or dramatic music. It was something deeper. The nearby sailors stiffened. A few officers looked up sharply, recognition dawning across their faces like a slow-burning flame. Word traveled fast on a ship, especially when it carried the weight of legend. Within minutes, whispers turned into purposeful movement. Senior officers began to gather, their expressions shifting from curiosity to solemn respect. Daniel didn't understand what was happening at first. He thought maybe he had said something wrong, that he and Noah were in the way. Years of living on the margins had trained him to expect trouble when attention turned his direction. He knelt slightly to Noah's level, reassuring him with a quiet presence, preparing to be escorted away if necessary. He had no idea that the ship itself seemed to be holding its breath. Then the admirals arrived. One by one, they emerged onto the deck, men and women whose careers spanned decades, whose authority could stop entire operations with a single word. They looked at Daniel not as a civilian, not as a guest, but as something else entirely. Their posture changed, their movements synchronized, and without fanfare, without explanation, every one of them raised a hand in salute. The world seemed to tilt. Sailors froze mid-step. Conversations died instantly. Noah looked up at his father, confused, sensing the gravity of the moment without understanding it. Daniel felt something crack open inside him, something he had sealed shut years ago. He hadn't stood like that in a long time, hadn't felt that recognition, that unspoken acknowledgement of shared sacrifice. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he returned the salute not because he wanted to be seen, but because respect demanded respect. The truth, pieced together later by those who hadn't known, was staggering. Daniel Hayes had once been part of a classified unit so specialized that its missions rarely existed on paper. He had led operations that saved lives, prevented disasters, and asked him to walk away from things no human should have to carry alone. He had risen through ranks quickly, not because he sought power, but because others trusted him with their lives. And then, at the height of his career, he had left. No scandal, no disgrace, just a quiet resignation following the loss of his wife, a choice to become a full-time father instead of a ghost who visited home between deployments. The admirals saluted not just his former rank, but what it represented of the courage to serve, and the courage to step away when family needed him more. They saluted a man who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. As the moment passed, the ship seemed to exhale. The formalities dissolved, but the respect lingered in every glance cast Daniel's way. Sailors who had ignored him earlier now nodded subtly as he passed. Officers slowed their steps, offering quiet words of gratitude. Daniel accepted it all with humility, his focus never drifting far from Noah, who now walked a little taller, his small hand gripping his father's with pride. For Daniel, the hardest part wasn't the attention, it was the memories it stirred. The faces of teammates lost, the weight of decisions that could never be undone, the nights spent staring at ceilings, wondering if he had done enough. For years, he had told himself that chapter was over, that he was just a dad now, scraping by, doing his best. But standing on that deck, saluted by admirals, he realized something profound. He had never stopped being who he was, he had simply chosen a different battlefield. The rest of the day unfolded gently. Noah explored the ship with wide-eyed wonder, guided by sailors who treated him like an honored guest. Daniel watched from a distance, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. He saw how kindness multiplied when respect was given freely. He felt something close to peace settle in his chest. Later, as the sun dipped low and painted the sea in shades of gold, Daniel stood alone for a moment, reflecting. He thought about how close he had come to declining the invitation, to hiding from the world yet again. He thought about how easily people underestimated him, and how often he underestimated himself. Life hadn't become easier, but it had become clearer. His past didn't trap him, it strengthened him, and his future, centered on his son, felt brighter than it had in a long time. Before the visit ended, one of the senior officers quietly ensured Daniel received information about support programs, education opportunities for Noah, and connections Daniel never knew he still had. No promises were made, no favors demanded, just doors reopened that Daniel hadn't realized were still unlocked. As they left the ship, Noah looked back one last time, waving enthusiastically at the sailors lined along the rail. Daniel followed his gaze, feeling a swell of emotion he didn't try to hide. He had come aboard expecting nothing more than a day out for his son. He left reminded of his worth, his resilience, and the invisible threads that bind those who serve, no matter how far apart their lives drift. If this story is already stirring something inside you, hold on to that feeling. It's the reminder that dignity doesn't disappear just because life gets hard, and that respect has a way of finding those who quietly earn it. Just before this story ends, I want to ask you something special. Drop a comment below telling us what this story made you feel, or who it reminded you of. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. As Daniel and Noah walked away, hand in hand, the massive ship behind them faded into the distance, but the moment stayed etched in their hearts forever. A joke meant to pass the time had revealed a legacy of sacrifice, humility, and love. And in that brief, powerful exchange, a single father learned that even when the world forgets your battles, it never truly forgets your courage. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach others who need hope, healing, and a reminder that extraordinary strength often lives inside the quietest people.